Hi everyone. Today we're going to be trying our hands at what turned out to be a relatively difficult walk animation for one of the more complex enemy types in my game, the Raptor. This video was meant to be a pixel art tutorial, but I think it ended up being something more than that, and hopefully something better. Follow along as we fail repeatedly, learn from our mistakes, and in the end, ultimately, succeed at creating a game-ready walk animation. Welcome to Red Prism. To start off, let's list off all of the 3 primary mistakes that I made during the creation process. Number 1, not separating out the individual body parts. This one is fairly self-explanatory, but I thought this animation would be easy enough without breaking out the individual limbs into their own separate layers. Number 2, not blocking out motion. Instead of using smaller shapes to represent the extremities of the joints and limbs, I started off by drawing the entire limb and trying to manipulate the whole thing all at once on every frame. And lastly, number 3, using an improper inspiration image. Note again that it wasn't bad inspiration, it just wasn't the correct reference for what we were trying to accomplish. Here I'm going to let you in on a little secret, something all my former World of Warcraft addicts out there will be all too familiar with. Okay, that's way too adorable to cut, but we're looking for something a little more gritty. WoWDB is an absolutely insane source for reference animations, no matter what type of animations you're working on, whether it's pixel art, 2D, or 3D graphics. We're going to go with Avis the Raptor here and see how she looks. Perfect! I think this will do nicely for what we need. But as you could see while I was scrolling through the NPCs, they have full 3D models with walk, run, attack, and damage animations, pretty much anything you can think of, for every type of creature that has ever been imagined in a fantasy setting. And all the models can be rotated for top-down, isometric, side-scroller, any angle you need. Okay, so here we're just moving the playhead and grabbing screenshots at various points in the walk animation. Next, we're going to scroll through them quickly in Windows Explorer to make sure the animation reads properly. Right off the bat here, I think I rushed this part a bit and didn't do as good of a job getting 6 solid frames that would work well as a full animation, but it's a start. Now we're going to head over to Asprite and use the Windows side-by-side feature to set up our workspace and start animating. Right away you're going to notice me struggling away with that first point that I mentioned, not separating out the individual body parts. I brute forced my way through it here for a bit before realizing that I really don't need to animate the back leg at all. The only thing we need to do is animate the front leg to completion and then offset its animation halfway through the loop, using the dark red color for the back leg. Here, I think we've got a fairly good animation cycle for both legs, so we're going to start moving on to the rest of the body. I noticed back in the animation player on WoWDB that there's this strong arching of the back that's happening on every step of the animation. So I do my best to incorporate that into our walk cycle 2 times on repeat, once for each step. After that starts looking decent, we're going to add in a little head bob. I thought it would work nice if the mouth sort of bounced open and closed along the head, as if this guy was walking around looking for his next snack. Moving on to the claws next, I'm going for sort of a figure 8 motion here, with one claw doing a loop around, and then offsetting that same loop with the claw in the back to give us a really nice steady sense of motion, like you'd lose your finger if you stuck it in there. The tail comes next, and as you can see here, I thought this was going to be an easy win by simply using a sine wave animation and calling it a day. The angle in the middle of the wave was far too sharp to begin with, but I corrected that, and the result turned out okay. The sine wave method may have worked better for a run animation, but even then, I'd probably tone it down even more. I decided to chop the tail off completely and try something else. I'm going to call this method the sliding stack. I'm sure there's another name for this technique out there somewhere, but I'm not sure, so we'll go with sliding stack for now. I'm going to open up a new drawing in Sprite to demonstrate instead of trying to explain what I mean. Notice we sort of start with a stack of different length lines and rearrange them almost like a horizontal version of those sorting algorithm visualizations. This method is then repeated for the tail feather, and now this whole thing is looking decent. Let's export it and apply it to our enemy in Godot. And wait, what's this? It almost looks like the early stages of a video game. Well, yes, dear viewer, it is. And I might as well take this opportunity to announce the project I'm working on called Element Zero. I'm leaning toward a more gritty version of the original Commander Keen, with modern Metroidvania elements thrown in to make it more fast-paced, but more on that to come soon. First, let's clean up the claws a little. Here I'm just going to remove every part of the claw that is visible to the left of the front claw. Don't be afraid to delete part of an overlapping animation if it's causing too much visual noise. I think this turned out so much more clean without the two claws competing for visual attention. We'll clean up the animation a little and fill out the body to make sure we don't have any portions of the animation unfinished, and then it's back to Godot to try this again. Here it's looking so close, but still there is something not quite right about it. At this point, I decide to switch gears and try to remedy that second mistake on my list, not blocking in the motion.
Never forget your ABCs. Always be copying other always be using a reference image. But seriously, using a reference has been a staple of an artist's workflow since the beginning of recorded history. The very first artist in the world stood in a cave and blew crushed up dust at a wall using his hand as a stencil. But what about the second artist? He stood about 2 feet to the right of the first guy and tried exactly the same thing, followed by everyone else in the village who saw what they were doing. Anyway, blocking out the motion would turn out to be a great choice in the end, but to start off, it led directly into the third mistake I made, which was using an improper reference.
Let me show you what I mean with another example. This reference looked perfect, an animal leg similar to the one we're trying to create, with great blocking for the motion each section would need for a walk animation. However, I made one crucial mistake. I tried to emulate the motion of the front set of legs instead of the back set. The back legs and the front legs of animals don't move entirely the same. Who knew? By the way, many of you will probably recognize this pixel art tutorial series as it's all over Google and Pinterest. The artist's name is Saint11, and all of his tutorials are available for free on saint11.art. Back to the video, and what in the world is even happening at this point? The motion looks so great when I had it blocked out, but this is a complete disaster. I'm not even sure if I can show this on screen. Let's reblock the motion to something closer to the back legs of our reference this time, and stick closer to the animation by keeping the lower legs bent at all times and only adding motion to the foot. Once more back to WoWDB to check our reference, and let's finish this thing off. By the way, once completed, the Sprite files created in this tutorial series will be available for just $1 each on itch.io, including every animation for that given enemy type, and even one for the player character. However, if the paid versions of these files are out of reach, and believe me, I've been there, feel free to visit my website at redprism.io and shoot me an email request for any files you'd like, free of charge. This is a policy I'll be holding up to and including the full release of Element Zero when it becomes available. And with that, we're almost there. Just a little more cleanup, a dash of color, and... Thank you so much for watching, and for joining me on the start of my journey into content creation and video game development. The irony is not lost on me that my first YouTube video was about creating a walk animation, but We all have to start slow before we can learn how to run, and jump, and double jump, and dash, and you get my point. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.